Thank you, everyone, for coming, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to come here also, take part in this festival. I barely made it, but we're here, and that's what counts. Sadhu Sangha. So we'll begin with Mangalacharana. Om Ajnana Tibirantasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Urave Nama Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Uttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Madgavira Bigopala Swikuryat Kripaya Yadi Tadaiva Sambhayaha Pitva Prishye Yustat Priyajanaha. I always begin with this prayer from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He says, my dear Lord Gopal, only if you accept my words to be like your cows will they give sweet milk and provide some inspiration unto your pure devotees. So again, thank you very much for all coming and for inviting me here as well. We were hearing about we've been hearing about the significance of Vyas Puja. This morning, Maharaj very nicely quoted from the 11th canto, Ācārya mam vijaniyan. So that's an important item. Here in this holy place, Ramesvaram. Normally this place is known for Ram Lila, and it's also considered to be a Shaiva Tirtha as well, because the main temple is Lord Shiva, who is worshipped here by Lord Ramachandra. So Vyas Puja means the worship of the spiritual master, but it often seems like Hindus worship everything, everyone. And they do, in fact. Most people in the world believe that Hinduism has many gods. How many gods? It's different categories are given in different places. But in one sense, it's true. There are many gods in Hinduism, 33 crores of demigods. That means 33 koti. Lots and lots of demigods. In another sense, it's not true. That's an inherent contradiction that we find as the nature of the absolute truth. And in fact, this is such an important principle to understand that Jiva Goswami has seen the need to write his Shat Sandarbhas largely in order to highlight the essential and central importance of this fundamental truth, this fundamental realization, that every endeavor to understand the Supreme by any non-devotional method, that is to say, lands us against this brick wall of Achintya Shakti. We have to deal with the Lord's inconceivable energy. And it's been said that the oneness and the difference of the devatas, specific devatas, with Lord Vishnu, that's an inconceivable thing. It's also been said that the oneness and the difference between Giriraj Govardhan and Lord Krishna is another one of these Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattvas. It's also a fact that the simultaneous oneness and difference of the spiritual master with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is also an Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva. The spiritual master is representing Krishna. He's made of nothing but Krishna, but at the same time, he's a Jivatma. He's not the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Instead, we say he's the Supreme Personality of Servitor Godhead. Sevak Bhagavan, as opposed to Sevya Bhagavan. These are the two aspects that Vaishnavas make a distinction. So, the higher sense behind all this real or imagined contradiction is that, as Srila Prabhupada once put it, we worship the one God who appears in an infinity of forms, and all those forms serve the same purpose. What purpose is that? That's Krishna's purpose. And Krishna identifies his purpose in Bhagavad Gita. Who knows the verses in which Krishna himself identifies his purpose in coming to this world in Bhagavad Gita? I think everyone here should know this. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuttanam dharmasya tadatmanam srijami aham paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkratam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. That's chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita, text 7 and 8. So there's definitely a hierarchy here, tadatamya. Some of these 33 Koti gods are in a superior position, and some of them are in an inferior position. Srila Prabhupada has explained this in several of his purports in Canto 2 of the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 10 in particular. He talks about 3 distinctions that we find in the Vedic literature between different classes of phenomenon that we find in this world. We have the adibhotic world that we all perceive. That's the physical world. Here we have, just short distance away, we have the sea, all the rivers running into the sea. Every one of those rivers is a personified goddess also. That's called the adhidaivic form of those rivers. And the adhyatmic form is the value of those rivers vis-a-vis their spiritual identity as eternal servants of Krishna. All the demigods can also be divided into these categories. Vallabhacharya's system of Shuddhadvaita Vaishnava Vedanta has focused in particular on these 3 things: adhyatmika reality, adhidaivic reality, and adibhotic reality. Our Ācāryas following Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we see rather things in terms of sambandha gyan, that is the relationships between all aspects of reality, which includes this threefold system of Vallabhacharya. And we see the abhidheya, the application of that understanding, sambandha gyan. Without sambandha gyan, you can't really apply anything in Krishna consciousness. You have to have some sense of what the Siddhanta is. That's why we have to read Srila Prabhupada's books very carefully. Carefully means slowly. I suggested the other day, read each purport out loud and give at least 1 second pause to think in between each sentence. That's how you have to study Srila Prabhupada's books. You cannot just skim through these books. You will miss too much. So anyway, Sambandha Gyana is the beginning responsibility of any jiva who would understand the absolute truth. You have to know who is who, what is what, What's the order everything is put into? That's called Sambandha Gyan. And without that, you cannot understand the absolute truth, even theoretically, what to speak of practically. And without that, there's no question of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Somebody may object, well, wait a minute, we've just spent an hour doing that. Everybody can chant, but not everybody can chant. There's a qualification here. You have to be free from offenses. And it's not to really understand the true nature of the holy name, Shuddha Nama. We can chant Nama Abhasa, and we can also practice Bhakti Abhasa, a shadow of devotional service, or a shadow reflection of the holy name. But to really enter into the holy name, to really enter into the ocean of nectarine rasa of bhakti, bhakti rasamrit sindhu, we have to have adequate sambandha gyan, which frees us from offenses. So that only will lead us to the prayojana, the ultimate goal of life, which is prema. Prema pum artho mahan. So there's all kinds of contradictions in the Vedic literatures. I think everyone sitting here today can agree easily that were it not for Srila Prabhupada and his Bhaktivedanta purports, there is no way that we would have any way to process what we experience when we come to a place like Ramesvaram. There's no way that we would be able to put order into our experience of any temple anywhere. There's no way that we would understand anything of the Bhagavad Gita. At least I can say this in my case. Before I came to Krishna consciousness, I read many editions of Bhagavad Gita, but could not understand them. As soon as I read Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, all of those other editions were very clear, very clearly bogus. So this is important. And this is why the Ācārya is, we can say, the most important form of the Lord for us as conditioned souls, just trying to, struggling to establish Sambandha Gyan in this world, where there are so many threats to our faith, there are so many temptations to distract us, there are so many things to bewilder us. It's a very dangerous situation that we're in as embodied conditioned souls in this world. So, as we said, Krishna's purpose is to come here to pull us out. Those who have any inclination for devotional service, he comes to deliver those persons, paritrana. And those who have chosen to remain, deliberately chosen to remain averse to devotional service, Krishna comes to destroy them. Keep it in mind. Next time you want to deviate, just keep it in mind. Because Krishna says, mat chitta sarva durgani mat prasadat trishyasi atachetvam ahankarad nashosyasi vinangshyasi. If you remain your mind fixed upon me, you're going to cross over every obstacle, kandipa. There's no question about it. You definitely will overcome every obstruction, every threat, every distraction, every material desire, every illusion, every bad habit, everything black within our hearts. We can transcend it by divine grace, but only by hearing submissively from the Lord, or more likely from his pure devotee. So Matchitta Sarva Durgani. Durga means you can't go. Durga really means a prison. It's like forts. Forts are called Durga because you can't get in, you can't get out. And this world is just like that. We know Maya Devi is in charge of this prison, fort, if you will. And Krishna himself asserts, he affirms, confirms in Bhagavad Gita that nobody gets out of here. Daivi hiesha mama maya, what's that? Daivi hiesha gunamayi, mama maya durachaya. But mameva te prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. By Krishna's grace, by hearing submissively to Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, as explained in the Bhaktivedanta purports, Then we can understand everything very clearly. On the other hand, if we still choose not to do that, even after hearing so many instructions in the matter of chanting the holy name, if we choose to retain my own false ego as the center of my consciousness and my own material desire, all my whole false, deep fake identity as the center of my existence, what does Krishna say about that? We're acting out of false ego. And what happens when you act out of false ego in that way? Vinangshyasi, you'll be ruined, you'll be destroyed. Kyonki mrityu sarvaharashchaham. As at least as death, Krishna comes and removes everything from your life, or he removes you from your life, more accurately. So, this is why it's imperative, while we are human beings, while we have the faculty of intelligence to consider the things that we're hearing right now, we have to take advantage of that, because you will lose it, guaranteed. You will definitely lose that faculty. It's just a question of time. So, there's a hierarchy among all these demigods. Some are lesser, some are greater, we mentioned already. And to have these comparatives means that there must be a superlative. Just like in Sanskrit, we have Gurutara, Gurutama, the heavier and heaviest. So anytime you have comparatives, you have to have a superlative. Logically, there has to be a hierarchy of these greater and lesser demigods. Therefore, by the same logic, one of them has to be the supreme. Nityo nityanam chaitanash chaitananam ego bahunam yo vididhati kaman. We're all eternal. The supreme absolute truth is also eternal. We're all conscious, sentient beings. The supreme is also a sentient being, conscious. What does it mean to be sentient? Anybody know this word in English? I don't know how you say this in your native tongue, but what does sentient mean, to be sentient? It means you have feelings. You're a person. This is what we have to get. Someone asked Indradumna Swami, what's the most important aspect of deity worship? And he answered in this way. The most important thing is to remember always you're dealing with Krishna, who is a person, not just a marble statue or a metal statue. So this holy name is not just an ordinary sound vibration also. He's a person. He's the supreme person, eternal conscious person. What is the function of that eternal conscious person among all so many eternal conscious persons? What is the function of the supreme one? Eko bahunam yo vididhati kaman. He fulfills all the needs of everyone else. That's the absolute truth. So all these demigods, they're actually all servants of Krishna. Krishna himself says in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, text number 2. Anybody know that verse? Aham Adir He Devanam. Yeah, he's the source of all the demigods. We know from Brahma Samhita, they all work under his higher direction, right? Lord Shiva is described in texts, you can say 44 through 45. Durga is also described, and other demigods, text 50 through 53. You have Ganesh, you have Surya, you have all these demigods. So, Ekala Ishwara Krishna Arasha Bhritya. Now, Brahma Samhita, same Brahma Samhita tells us first verse of the 5th chapter. What is it? Ishwaraha Paramaha Krishnaha Satchit Ananda Vigrahaha Anadiradir Govindaha Sarvakarana Karanam. Who is Ishwara? Shiva. Right? Yeah. No. He is Ishwara. We're all Ishwara to some degree. But Ishwara Paramaha Krishna, that means Ishwara or Lord Shiva, he's the supreme. He's the supreme form of Krishna, right? Is that correct? The supreme form of Krishna is Lord Shiva, right? Some of you look like you're not sure. You have to be sure. Srila Prabhupada used to shoot these questions at us all the time just to make sure that you know what you're talking about. That it's realized knowledge, not just you remember some verses and then it has no relevance in your life. So, no. How do we know that it's not Ishvara, meaning Lord Shiva? Satchidananda. Well, maybe Lord Shiva has Satchidananda Vigraha, somebody may assert. So, Anadir Adir, yeah, okay, Shiva maybe could still be. Govinda, Govindam, Adi Purusham, Tamaham Bhajami. That cuts it right there, because only Krishna is taking care of cows. Well, wait a minute, Pashupati. In Tamil, Pasu means cow. Only cow, correct? Not animal. Sanskrit, it means any animal. In Tamil, it means only cows. So even then somebody could argue, but you read the rest of the book, you will find everything, all these, even Lord Shiva and his wife, everybody glorifying Lord Govinda, Krishna. And he's described. One, I think it was an interview from Bhavan's Journal in 1976, if I'm not mistaken. The man was asking, Swamiji, what is it that makes your society any different from any other religious organization or any other religion? And Prabhupada replied very just straight, we understand who God is. They say you should love God with all your heart and soul. The Christians say this. Or the Muslims say, what is that? Allahu Akbar. And God is great. But they don't know much about God. They really don't have any information. What's his name? Where does he live? What does he like to eat? Who are his friends? What does he do all day long? Nobody has answers to these questions. That's why when Srila Prabhupada gave us the first verse of, Brahma's prayers in Brahma Samhita, Chintamani Prakara Sadmasu. He lives in houses that are all made out of touchstone. What is a touchstone? Anything you touch that stone to, it can turn to gold. Sanatana Goswami had one. Or it fulfills any desire. Chinta, money. Chinta means thought in Sanskrit. And in Hindi it means anxiety only. But in Sanskrit it means spiritual, actually, spiritual gems. All the houses are made out of spiritual gems because they're made out of the gold dust that is Vrindavan Renu, Gokula Thuli. And those bricks are made out of that. And all the houses are made out of that. So they're all and they're surrounded by Kalpavriksha trees. Kalpavriksha tree is also fulfilling your desires. Anything you want when you go to Vrindavan, if you pray to the trees, they will give it to you. If you have faith and if you're sincere and following. And then, who is wandering amidst those trees and around the houses? Who's there? What's the next line? Chintamani prakara sadmasu kalpavriksha lakshavrateshu surabhirapi palayantam. There's so many thousands of cows, surabhi cows. Surabhi is also well known, wish-fulfilling cow. So the dust of Vrindavan, the trees of Vrindavan, the cows of Vrindavan, they all fulfill your desires. And there's one boy who is tending all of them, and that is Govinda. That is Krishna. Surabhiri palayantam Lakshmi sahasra shata sambhrama sevyamanam. And so many hundreds and thousands of Lakshmi expansions in the form of these gopis, they're all running about doing so much seva. They're all, as we say in Hindi, astyast. Sambhrama in Sanskrit, sambhrama sevyamanam. They're very enthusiastically, very eagerly, anxious actually, to make sure that they do everything just right for Govinda, to make him happy. This is Goloka Vrindavan. So Prabhupada had this information. And he goes on to say through this same interview, Prabhupada is just opening up the spiritual world, one verse after another, from Brahma Samhita. Venum kvanantam aravinda dalaya taksham. He's playing on a flute. He has these blooming eyes like lotus petals. The whole description is there. This information Srila Prabhupada told members of Gaudiya Math in 1936. This information only comes from the Ācārya. Even in the unlikely event that you could have come across an edition of Brahma Samhita without Srila Prabhupada's touch, then you still would not have understood that language. I don't think so. Even if you read it in English, even if you speak English like Shashi Tharoor, I don't think you would understand it. So, because native speakers in my country, USA, we don't understand Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's English so much. It's not easy. But Srila Prabhupada told his godbrothers, without the Ācārya, there is no way that we could ever have had any glimmer of what is the absolute truth. You know who else says this? In his commentary on Prema Bhakti Chandrika, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur said the same thing. This, in his opinion, is the significance of the verse that we all sing. Om Ajnana Timirantasya Nananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Nama. What is that ignorance? The ignorance of this bodily conception of life that drives us on and on and on and on and on. Birth after birth after birth. Sometimes as a human being, sometimes as a demigod, sometimes as an animal, sometimes as a tumbi. All the Tamils know what is a tumbi. Dragonfly. So all different 8,400,000 non-devotional options are available to us. And the desire trees of Vrindavan and the cows of Vrindavan and the dust of Vrindavan, they will give you any of those that you like. So be careful when you go to Vrindavan. But the Ācārya is the only one who can give us a glimmer of what is the absolute truth in the form of a person, the personality of Godhead, the supreme personality of Godhead. I was going to say, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that this is the significance of that prayer. He removes the ignorance of our ignorance by giving us this understanding. Who is that Krishna, Govinda, Supreme Personality of Godhead? Can hardly come to this understanding here or anywhere without the touch of the Ācārya. And for all of us sitting here today, that means without Srila Prabhupada's touch. So, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad tells us that, I mentioned already, there are 33 koti devatas. And someone was asking, how many gods are there? That was the first answer. And they said, well, really? I mean, that seems like a lot of gods. And he said, well, no, there's actually only 33 gods. Who are those 33 gods? They're called Tridasha for short in Sanskrit. Anybody know who the 33 demigods are? 8 Vasus, 12 Adityas, 11 Rudras, 2 Ashwins. And the Ashwins they're kind of like honorary gods. They weren't really gods in the beginning, but they've been made into gods. So it's a bewildering complex of gods in the Vedic literature. It's a bewildering array of different processes that are offered to us for our deliverance. For the Jnani types, you get the non-devotional meditation on Brahman, or you get abstruse reflection on the concepts that are outlined in Vedanta, and they can only be outlined. They can't really be filled in too much, because that's the nature of impersonal knowledge. And you certainly can't apply that knowledge in the Brahmavad realm, because as soon as you apply knowledge, it's no longer pure theory. And according to Mayavad, if it's not theoretical, it's impure. So who has a chance of understanding anything about God without Srila Prabhupada. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada has given us a wonderful purport to help us appreciate his position or the position of our spiritual master. Now, for those who are initiated by one of his transparent followers, 8th canto, chapter 3, text number 2. Shri Gajendra Uvacha Om Namo Bhagavate Tasmai Yadetat Chidatmakam Yata Etat Chidatmakam Purushayadi Bijaya Pareshaya Bidhimehi. The king of the elephants, Gajendra, said, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Person, Vasudeva. Because of him, this material body acts due to the presence of spirit, and he is therefore the root cause of everyone. He is worshipable for such exalted persons as Brahma and Shiva. We've already talked about that. And he has entered the heart of every living being. Let me meditate upon him. What does this have to do with the spiritual master? What on earth does any of this have to do with the spiritual master? Let's hear from Srila Prabhupada to see what he says. It's very awakening. In this verse, the words etat chit atmakam are very important. The material body certainly consists only of material elements, but when one awakens to Krishna consciousness understanding, the body is no longer material, but spiritual. The material body is meant for sense enjoyment, whereas the spiritual body engages in the transcendental, loving service of the Lord. Therefore, a devotee who engages in the service of the Supreme Lord and who constantly thinks of him should never be considered to have a material body. Who is Prabhupada talking about? Huh? Who is Srila Prabhupada talking about? He's talking about the spiritual master, my friends. Just listen. Therefore, a devotee who engages in the service of the Supreme Lord and who constantly thinks of him should never be considered to have a material body. It is therefore enjoined. Guru Shunaramati. One should stop thinking of the spiritual master as an ordinary human being with a material body. Ācārya Vishnu Shilatihi. Everyone knows that the deity in the temple is made of stone, but to think of the deity is merely stone is an offense. Similarly, to think that the body of the spiritual master consists of material ingredients is offensive. Atheists think that devotees foolishly worship a stone statue as God and an ordinary man as the guru. The fact is, however, that by the grace of Krishna's omnipotence, the so-called stone statue of the deity is directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the body of the spiritual master is directly spiritual. A pure devotee who is engaged in unalloyed devotional service should be understood to be situated on the transcendental platform. Sagunan samatityaitan brahmabhuyaya kalpate. Let us therefore offer our obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by whose mercy so-called material things also become spiritual when they are engaged in spiritual activity. Does Krishna talk about this in Bhagavad Gita? Anyone can think of a verse in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna talks about this? How matter is turned into spirit, or vice versa? Who knows a verse? I'll give you a hint. Chapter 4. I'll give you another hint. Chapter 4, verse number. Yes. Go ahead. Brahmarpanam brahmahavir brahmagno brahmanahutam brahmaiva tena gantavyam brahma karma samadhina That means that, according to Prabhupada's translation, anything engaged in devotional service becomes spiritual, including the material body, including the material mind, the material senses. They're no longer material once they're engaged. Engaged means engaged under the direction, authorized direction of Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. Not Guru, Guru, Guru. Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So when one engages in devotional service in this way, then one's body becomes transformed to the extent that he's engaged. If you engage 24 hours a day in this pure devotional service under this direction, you are a pure devotee. Your body is considered to be no longer material. If you are worshiping a spiritual master with any other conception in life, be careful. Most likely you're committing offenses, and definitely you're not getting the benefit from it, at least not the full benefit. So this is an important purport. Srila Prabhupada even assumes that we are in this attitude when he tells us, it is therefore enjoined, Gurushu Naramati. One should stop thinking of the spiritual master as an ordinary human being with a material body. He's already concluded that we're doing this. All right, so that's one very nice quote that can kind of tie all these ideas together. We have so many demigods, we have so many understandings of what is Hinduism, but there's only one that is coming in Guru Parampara, which is Krishna teaching to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, age after age after age. Whenever it becomes nashta, yogo nashta parantapa, then he comes again and he establishes the same thing again. So, in the 11th canto, we also hear likewise. In fact, we heard this morning from Bhaktivikas Swami. Ācārya mam vijaniyan navamanyeta karahachita namartya buddhyasu yeta sarva devamayo guruhu. All these demigods we mentioned, 33 koti of them, or 33 of them, or 3 of them, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, or 1, Krishna. They all are manifest as in the person of the bona fide spiritual master. We should not forget this. We should not ever forget this. Srila Prabhupada once in Vrindavan, who was it told me? Shrutakirti told me. Shrutakirti, his practice was whenever he was serving Srila Prabhupada, he would bring Prabhupada one hot chapati and he would put it on Prabhupada's plate. And then he would bow down and pay his obeisances before going back to get the next chapati, because he saw his spiritual master. The injunction is, whenever you see the spiritual master, you have to bow down. And he tried to follow that. And his intuition was later confirmed by Srila Prabhupada, who pointed out one devotee was doing the same thing, but he wasn't paying obeisances when he kept coming and going from Prabhupada's presence. He wasn't paying obeisances every time. And Prabhupada looked at Shrutakirti. Prabhupada certainly noticed Shrutakirti's habit. And he told Shrutakirti, see that? That's the beginning of his fall down. So Ācārya mam vijaniyan. One has to understand through the eyes of Shastra, who is this spiritual master? Who is this Ācārya? Na avamanyeta. You should never think less of him. Oh, he's from London, obviously, or he's the New York Jew, or he's, whatever we think. Na avamanyeta. Or you should not think that, he's got some flaws, but, we all have flaws. No, sorry, the wrong mentality. Karahicit means at no time should you permit your mind to tell you to think or speak less of the Ācārya. Na martya buddhya suyeta. You should not think that he's an ordinary person. Now this is bewildering. You know why? Because even the author of Krishna Karnamritam, Lila Shuk Bilva Mangala Thakur, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in Chaitanya Charitamrita says, he was an ordinary material man in the beginning. That is to say, before he was awakened by the words of Chintamani. You all know that story, I think. Chintamani spoke some harsh words, which awakened him to the reality of his material entanglement. And he took it that my guru, my eternal spiritual master, spoke through this prostitute. Two things here. Number one, you should be humble enough to accept instructions even from a prostitute. Don't think you don't have to listen to anybody, such as a sannyasi. Even a prostitute you should take a good instruction from, which means you should recognize that good instruction, which means you have to be familiar with instructions enough to recognize a good one, which means you have to read Prabhupada's books every day. Otherwise, you're out of touch. So, namartya buddhya and na asuyeta. This is the essence of it all. Do not be envious. He's getting so much respect. Why he gets so much respect? Why don't people understand my position? We tend to judge if somebody's intelligence is directly commensurate to the degree to which they give us respect. Yes, he knows what's happening because he respects me. This is asuyeta. You should not be envious of the spiritual master. And then we've come full circle. Sarva Deva Maya Guru. We've been talking about all these 33 crore demigods. They're all in the body of the spiritual master. Just like we see that picture of the cow, and all the demigods are inhabiting the body of the cow, right? So Sarva Deva Mayo Guruhu means that he's made of all these demigods. How is that so? How can it possibly be so? Just by dint of his devotional service, all these demigods are what make him up. How is it possible? Can anyone explain this? Raise your hand if you can explain this. I'll volunteer one explanation based on all the Ācārya's commentary on the 5th canto. Yasyasti bhaktira bhagavati akinchana sarvai gunais tatra samasate suraha harao abhaktasya kuto mahadgunaha manorathe davat matorathenasidi davatobahi. Now, I have to admit, honestly, when I was new to Krishna consciousness and first read this verse, I thought, my God, that is a totally fanatical statement. Only the devotees can have good qualities. Nobody else has any good qualities. It sounds completely biased. It sounds completely unreasonable, untrue even. We may be thinking like this, but there is a science to it. But that science is only revealed to us if we have taken the trouble to sit at the feet of the Ācārya and hear submissively. As I mentioned, all the Ācāryas commenting on this verse have explained how it is that the Ācārya, bona fide spiritual master, he is the embodiment of all the demigods. They say, with most conditioned jivas, what are the demigods' obligations to those jivas? We're all working on karma. We're all, it said, likitam api lalate pronchitam kahasamartha. Everybody's limited by the, we can say, indelible barcode on your forehead that kind of tells your whole story and what your karma is. So the devatas can read that. So with most ingrates, with most foolish conditioned souls, the demigods, they don't really care so much. They just come and give you your karma and then they go. It's a job for them because they're also conditioned souls, remember? Even though they're gods at the same time. Achintya Bheda Bheda. But their responsibility is limited to administering your good karma or your bad karma. Once the good karma runs out, it's gone. Once the bad karma runs out, it's gone. They no longer care. That's with most people, because most people are coming and going from Yamaraja's abode, and they don't frankly care about anyone else, including demigods. And so the demigods don't think much of them either. Parasparam. Krishna says in chapter 3 of Bhagavad Gita, if on the other hand, if you respect the devatas and you offer yajnas for their happiness and for their maintenance even, because our yajnas do maintain them, then they reciprocate in appreciation. It's like any other person on Facebook or anywhere else. You treat them nicely, they'll treat you nicely. That's what devatas are like with us. But the devotee is in a different condition. Why? Because he's practicing akinchana bhakti. He has no material desire for himself, and that's very rare. Why? Because he's a haituki. He has no personal agenda. Swasti astu vishvasya khala prasidatam jhayantu bhutani shivam methodya manashabhadram bhajatar hokshaje aveshyatam no matir api ahaituki. This is in the same chapter. It's explained. A devotee who has this selfless attitude of not wanting anything from this world, only wanting Krishna, that person is very rare. Narayana Parayanaha. And the demigods, when they see this, they're intelligent, far more than we can even imagine. They're struck. Wait a minute, this one is special. I'm not just going to give him his karma and disappear. I can actually benefit from this person's association because he's a nishkinchana. I'm not a kinchana. I'm a sakama bhakta. Most of the demigods are like this. And so they're thinking like this. So, sam asate suraha means samyak asate. They come, they sit down, and they stay in the heart of a devotee. They don't leave. That is why when the devotees develop good qualities through the execution of pure devotion, those qualities are forever. They don't go away. Qualities that come from our karma, good karma or bad karma, they come and go. But the blessings of devatas and the blessings of, well, we can say Bhakti Devi, this is for real. This is forever. This is how Krishna defines reality in chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, is it not? Who knows the definition? Nasato? This is something that has no end, that's real. Something that cannot endure, that's false. This is his definition, not mine, Krishna's definition. So these qualities of the pure devotees are the only real qualities in the sense that they're not going anywhere. They're going to stay with him forever. And that cannot be said of the non-devotees. So the non-devotees, they can therefore be said to not have any good qualities. This temporary karma may look like it's a good quality, but it's going to be gone soon enough. It's nothing to be concerned about. But with the devotees, it's a different story altogether. Just like devotional service is not comparable to karma kanda piety. This is one of the offenses. People commit this offense all the time. They think that to come here and to bathe in the 21 tirthas and to see Lord Shiva and then go to a restaurant and eat all kinds of unmentionable things, they think that's their religion. But that's just karma coming and going. Pure devotional service is a change of heart. And that change of heart is mainly affected by what? Or by whom, I should say. Contact with a pure devotee. Come in contact with a pure devotee. Not only does he awaken you, not only does he inspire you, but he teaches you. And his example is there for you to emulate. And then if you do that, lo and behold, you yourself will one day look in the mirror and behold a pure devotee right in front of you. This is the great, great benediction of having the association of a pure devotee. Therefore, Lord Shiva says, Aradhananam sarvesham Vishnur aradhanam param kandipa parantu tasmat parataram devi tadyanam samarshanam. Even better than worshiping Vishnu, out of all the possible things you could worship or persons you could worship, yeah, Vishnu is certainly supreme, but even better than worshiping Vishnu is worshiping the person that he worships. How much does Krishna appreciate the love that we show to him? How much? How can you quantify it? Look at Ramchandra, what he did here, in this place. He came to worship his own devotee, Lord Shiva, because Sada Kale Kale, what is that verse? Sada Kale Kale. Anyway, I forget now. From Jagannath Ashtakam. Lord Shiva is always glorifying the Lord. Always. Mahadeva Panchamukhe, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, or Rama Rama Hare Hare, because he worships Sankrishna. So Mahadev is such a great, best of all the devotees, Vaishnavanam Yatha Shambhu, according to Bhagavatam. So this place where Ramchandra set the example of worshiping Lord Shiva, this is the best place for us to set the example to everyone who sees us. What example do we want to set here? I'm worshiping the Ācārya. I'm worshiping the devotee of Krishna, that person whom Krishna himself wants to worship. I finally got it. In the 7th canto we hear, no? The instructions of Prahlad to his father. What is the best thing that you've learned? The best thing I've learned is to take the dust of the lotus feet of a Vaishnava upon my head. This is intelligence. This is what we should do here. So this is a Vyas Puja ceremony. It's a great opportunity to do this. And these are a couple of verses we can consider from the Bhagavatam. I'm just going to read you the translation and some of the BBT purport. One should know the Ācārya as myself and never disrespect him in any way. One should not envy him, thinking him an ordinary man, for he is the representative of all the demigods. Purport. This verse appears in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila chapter 146. Naturally, what is Adi Lila chapter 1 all about? Spiritual masters. His divine grace, Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvijagacharya Ashtottara Shata Shri Srimad Abhay Charanaravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada has commented on this verse as follows, and I quote, this is a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 11.17.27, spoken by Lord Krishna when he was questioned by Uddhava regarding the 4 social and spiritual orders of society. That is to say, Varnashrama, for your information. He was specifically instructing how a brahmachari should behave under the care of a spiritual master. This is significant because I'm seeing a lot of saffron in this crowd. So you have to listen up. A spiritual master is not an enjoyer of the facilities offered by his disciples. I was speaking to someone yesterday who told me they went to a so-called guru in, well, you don't even need to know where, North India, but they have them here also. And that person, very eagerly initiated the prospective disciple and then said, I need an apartment. Could you perhaps buy me a place in Vrindavan? And then the person went on to explain that, you can live there and from time to time I'll come, which kind of implied that, I'll come there and I'll be with you also. This is not right. This is not right. See, how many people get a bona fide spiritual master who will not do that kind of thing to them? How many? We're so fortunate to be here today. We're so fortunate to be in touch with His divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. He's not an enjoyer of the facilities that we offer to him. He's like a parent. All you parents know. Without the attentive service of the parents, a child cannot grow to manhood. Similarly, without the care of the spiritual master, one cannot rise to the plane of transcendental service. The spiritual master is also called Ācārya, or a transcendental professor of spiritual science. Manusmriti, or Manusamhita, 2.140, explains the duties of the Ācārya, describing that a bona fide spiritual master accepts charge of disciples, teaches them the Vedic knowledge with all its intricacies, and gives them their second birth. The ceremony performed to initiate a disciple into the study of spiritual science is called upaniti, or the function that brings one nearer to the spiritual master. One who cannot be brought nearer to a spiritual master cannot have a sacred thread, and thus he is indicated to be a Shudra. The sacred thread worn on the body of a Brahmana, Kshatriya, or Vaishnava is a symbol of initiation by the spiritual master. It is worth nothing if worn merely to boast of high parentage. The duty of the spiritual master is to initiate a disciple with a sacred thread ceremony. And after this samskara, or purificatory process, the spiritual master actually begins to teach the disciple about the Vedas. A person born a Shudra is not barred from such spiritual initiation, provided he is approved by the spiritual master. You have to be approved by the spiritual master. Remember, we were talking about living entities? Aside from being eternal, what is the other characteristic of the living entities? Remember? Chaitanash Chaitanana. They're sentient, they're conscious, they have thoughts, they have desires, they have impressions. We have to consider that. Ritviks do not consider this. They don't give Srila Prabhupada any choice. They assume Prabhupada is pre-approved alone. Pre-approved Diksha. Concoction. So the spiritual master here, Prabhupada said, the spiritual master has to approve of a disciple. And he's duly authorized to award the disciple the right to be a Brahmana if he finds him perfectly qualified. Means you can't just initiate somebody twice initiated just because you need to have a cook. People do that sometimes. Or because he gave me so much money. That's even worse. These are all bogus spiritual masters do these things. So in the Vayu Purana, an Ācārya is defined as one who knows the import of all the Vedic literatures, abides by their rules and regulations, and teaches his disciples to act in the same way. Only out of his immense compassion does the personality of Godhead reveal himself as the spiritual master. Therefore, in the dealings of an Ācārya, there are no activities but those of transcendental, loving service to the Lord. He is the supreme personality of Servitor, Godhead. It is worthwhile to take shelter of such a steady devotee, who is called Ashraya Vigraha, or the manifestation or form of the Lord, of whom one must take shelter. If one poses himself as an Ācārya but does not have an attitude of servitorship to the Lord, he must be considered an offender. And this offensive attitude disqualifies him from being an Ācārya. Sometimes we see so-called disciples, even disciples of Srila Prabhupada, they disagree with him. They try to fight his teachings instead of embracing them humbly like disciples. And Prabhupada here says this is offensive. The bona fide spiritual master always engages in unalloyed devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By this test, he is known to be a direct manifestation of the Lord, and a genuine representative of Sri Nityananda Prabhu. Such a spiritual master is known as Ācārya Deva. Influenced by an envious temperament and dissatisfied because of an attitude of sense gratification, mundaners criticize a real Ācārya. And we see this, do we not? Yes, we do. We see mundane persons, no matter what they claim or look to be, to criticizing even the real Ācārya. In fact, however, a bona fide Ācārya is non-different from the personality of Godhead, and therefore to envy such an Ācārya is to envy the personality of Godhead himself. What other meaning can you get out of the first line of this verse? Ācāryam mam. Sanskrit scholars, please confirm. Vijaniyan. You have to understand, he's me. Directly Krishna says it. Which part do you not understand? Ācāryam or mam? Krishna says he's me. Jnani tvat maiva me matam. Same idea. Therefore, to envy such an Ācārya is to envy the personality of Godhead himself. This will produce an effect subversive to transcendental realization. That means it will undo your transcendental realization. Not only will you not get more transcendental knowledge, but it will undo whatever knowledge you've already gained. That is the result of offenses. There's a little more to this purport. 2 more paragraphs. As mentioned previously, a disciple should always respect the spiritual master as a manifestation of Sri Krishna, but at the same time, one should always remember that the spiritual master is never authorized to imitate the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. Every generation, we see these characters. Every generation, including among Prabhupada's disciples, I'm sorry to admit. It has been seen. They try to imitate the Lord. False spiritual masters pose themselves as identical with Sri Krishna in every respect, to exploit the sentiments of their disciples, but such impersonalists can only mislead their disciples, for their ultimate aim is to become one with the Lord. This is against the principles of the devotional cult. The real Vedic philosophy is achintya bheda bheda tattva, we mentioned in the beginning, which establishes everything to be simultaneously one with and different from the personality of Godhead. Srila Raghunath Das Goswami confirms that this is the real position of the bona fide spiritual master, and says that one should always think of the spiritual master in terms of his intimate relationship with Mukunda, Sri Krishna. Srila Jiva Goswami in his Bhakti Sandarbha 213, I told you he writes his Sat Sandarbhas to explain this only, has clearly defined that a pure devotee's observation of the spiritual master and Lord Shiva as one with the personality of Godhead exists in terms of their being very dear to the Lord and not identical with him in all respects. So when we hear from the Padma Purana about the offenses against the holy name of the Lord, what is the first offense? Satam ninda namna paramama paratham vidanadeyata kyatim yata Katamusahate tad bigaraham. Shivasya Shri Vishnur Yaihanam, what is it? Gunanamadi Sakalam Dhyabhindam Pashyet Sakhalu Harinama Hitakaraha. You cannot derive benefit from Harinam if you think that this Shiva is different from the Rama who is worshiping him. Or if you think that the spiritual master is different from the Krishna that he worships. As far as you're concerned, they're equal, but only in terms of their authority, not in an absolute sense. This is important. It's not that the jiva becomes the, jivatma becomes the paramatma. No. It's not that Lord Shiva becomes Lord Vishnu. No. Once it's curdled, yogurt cannot go back, my friends. There is a difference. But you should not see that difference, because as far as you're concerned, as a little tiny follower struggling to even be a human being, what to speak of a devotee, for you, you have only to consider their authority, and their authority is equal. That's why Lord Shiva has his own Vaishnava Sampradaya. Some people don't realize, but he does. He's a devotee. Even Shankara Ācārya, despite the role that he had to play in this world, what did he say? Satyam Jnanam Anantam, Nityam Anakasham, Paramakasham Ityadi. He's worshiping Govindam, Paramanandam. He loves Govinda. Bhaja Govindam. He's a devotee. Okay. Following in the footsteps of Srila Raghunath Das Goswami and Srila Jiva Goswami, later Acharyas like Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur have confirmed the same truths. In his prayers to the spiritual master, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur confirms that all the revealed scriptures except the spiritual master accept the spiritual master, not accept, to be identical with the personality of God because he is a very dear, confidential servant. Same thing Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, Jnani Tvatmaiva. Doesn't mean he's merged into me. It means he's very beloved because he's taken the trouble to learn about me. Gaudiya Vaishnavas therefore worship Srila Gurudeva, the spiritual master, in light of his being the servitor of the personality of Godhead. In all the ancient literatures of devotional service and in the more recent songs of Srila Narottam Das Thakur, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and other unalloyed Vaishnavas, the spiritual master is always considered to be either one of the confidential associates of Srimati Radharani or a manifested representation of Srila Nityananda Prabhu. Okay. So these are a few thoughts we can discuss. If anyone has any questions about any of these things that we've talked about so far, I'm just generally trying to tie together the identity and difference of Ram with Shiva in this holy place of Ramesvaram, where this pastime played itself out. And given that this is the occasion of Vyas Puja for His Holiness Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, I'm tying in the identity of the spiritual master with the Lord in terms of this Achintya Bheda Bheda principle. These are a few of Srila Prabhupada's more prominent purports. There are many of them throughout his books, but I especially recommend anyone who's thinking about accepting a spiritual master, you have to study the first chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita so carefully, like a lawyer studies his law books. You really have to learn everything there. And it's kind of like the second chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. Every single verse is worth memorizing. Very, very important sections of our Shastras. So, does anyone have any questions or any comments on any of this? Yes, Gokula Chandra Prabhu. You can just shout, I can hear, and I'll repeat your question. Yeah. That's a very good point. For those of you who can't hear, he's saying that his spiritual master, your spiritual master, is always telling him that you have to be very careful to treat all of my God brothers with equal respect that you give me. But in addition to this point, or maybe accentuating this point, is that especially those God brothers who are in managerial positions in ISKCON, with whom your spiritual master may have a difference, or who may be genuinely deviating, because it does happen also. You have to still remain very, very careful not to commit any offense and not to mistreat them and not to overstep your own Ācārya. Srila Prabhupada was merciless in his criticisms of his godbrothers to us, not to them. To them, he was very kind, very cordial, even friendly, but he said some very strong things. But when he heard that we were repeating some of the things that he said, without understanding our own position, Srila Prabhupada became very angry. He said, that's not for you to say these things. Only I can say like that. You have no position to criticize. So you have to be careful of that. Look at it this way. In the 7th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Prahlad Maharaj was so harshly mistreated. You've all probably seen the movie Mahavatar Narsingha recently, put out in North India. It's a big deal. So, you can see how badly Hiranyakashipu treated Prahlad Maharaj for so many years. So, abominable behavior. And yet Prahlad Maharaj still respected him. Even Shanda and Amarka, who were demons, but Prahlad didn't entirely reject their authority 100%. He respected them as teachers because they were his gurus. He showed that etiquette. You have to give respect to the position. Whoever's sitting in the seat, that's another question, but you have to give respect to the seat. So this is an important point of etiquette. Why? Because someone asked Bhakti Vaibhava Puri Maharaj, they've all passed away now, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's disciples. But somebody asked him, what was it in your opinion that really caused the Gaudiya Math to fragment and fail the way that it did? Without much hesitation, Puri Maharaj immediately answered in one phrase, Adhikar Ulanghana. They just overstepped their authority. They thought they had more adhikar than they had. They took upon themselves more prerogative than was really due to them, and they messed everything up. We don't want to do that. Please be careful of this. There are good devotees whose examples we should emulate, and there are struggling devotees whose example may sometimes be emulated and sometimes not. And then there are others who are rascals, and definitely we should not emulate them, but we have to be careful to respect all of them. Not equal respect, mind you, but respect. What does Bhakti Vinod Thakur say? Shakale Shamman Korite Shakati Dehonatha Jatha Jatha. Means let me give respect to everybody. Everybody gets respect, but according to their station. Somebody who is in this position gets that much respect. Somebody who's in a different station gets some other kind of respect. It's not one size fits all. The respect goes to everybody, just like in the Varnashram system. Varnashram dharma means everybody has to follow their dharma. But not everybody has the same dharma to follow. So in the same way, everybody should be shown respect, but you have to discriminate. Discrimination is usually considered a bad word in woke society or in Marxist society. But actually discrimination, if you think about it, discrimination is the very essence of the Madhyama Adhikar. And Srila Prabhupada is constantly throughout his books encouraging all of us to come up to the level of Madhyama Adhikar. Do not remain as Kanishta Adhikar, Kanishta Adhikari, because Kanishta Adhikari's position is like Nalini Dalagata Jalamati Taralam Tatva Jivitamata Shayachapalam. Any minute you can be lost if you're just a Kanishta Adhikari because you don't have the faith, neither you have the intelligence either. And you do have the huge ego that impels you to commit offenses from time to time. Don't stay in that position. You will always be in that position if you offend others. Be careful. So that's why we say, Bandho mui sabodhano mate. Bandho mui sabodhano mate. You have to be very careful. As Maharaj was also saying this morning, it's like a razor's edge. The Upanishads tell us, Uttishtata jagrata varan prapyana bodhata. You're holding a razor to your throat, gentlemen, every morning. You know, one wrong move, one reckless moment, cut. And so the human life is also like that. Devotional life is also like that. Please be careful. Don't be another statistic. Do not tarnish the name of your spiritual master. Be ideal, be exemplary, be attractive on account of the permanent qualities brought to you by the virtue of the devatas who choose to remain in your association because they want that association. These are things we've discussed this morning. Is that okay? Anything else? No other questions or comments? Yes, Chitta Hari Prabhu. Yes. Yeah, I've told this many times. I think it was in Mumbai. Guru Puja was going on, and Prabhupada stopped the kirtan for dramatic effect. He stopped the entire kirtan. He just wanted to tell them, where is Tamal Krishna Goswami? So somebody ran upstairs. They knew where to run. He could only be in Prabhupada's office. That was his constitution. So they ran upstairs and they told him, Prabhupada wants to see you. And so Tamal Krishna Maharaj came down and Prabhupada told him that, however busy you are, no matter what you're doing, please don't miss Guru Puja. If you have to, you can do it at home, but don't neglect it. Don't neglect it. That's another way you can read this verse. Nava manyeta, or rather avagnya means to neglect. Guru avagnya. You have to worship your spiritual master every day. That's the only way you're going to understand what his position is, as we've been discussing this morning. Is that okay? Anything else? Otherwise, it is 1:00 exactly, and my time is up. Thank you all very much. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Jai.